My name is Bruno Herrmann from LT-Innovate, and today I have the utmost pleasure to talk with Carola. Hi, Carola. How are you?
Hi, Bruno. Thank you. I'm very well. Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. It's going to be a great conversation. I know it already. Since we are talking a lot about language intelligence, of course, we are going to talk about your view, your perspective, your experience as far as language intelligence is concerned, and obviously the impact of transformation and the reason for managing or leading language management in a way which is this framework called language intelligence. But first, if you can just tell a little bit about yourself for people who might not know you yet, so that they know who you are and what you do before diving into our favorite topics.
Thank you again for having me and for inviting me to this conversation today. I'm Carola. I've been working within the industry for almost 21 years now. I have a linguistic background, but also an economics and law background. I started off classically as a translator, luckily already at the intersection of language and technology. So that was my luck looking at how things are today. I was pretty lucky working at the intersection from the very beginning. Then after working as a translator, I changed into the field of consulting. So I was looking very much into the technology aspect of things, how technology and language can interact for the benefit of efficiency and quality. And I've also been working in senior management roles in the medtech field mainly for also the last 13 years now. I'm currently the head of content operations at Zeiss, or the medical technology segment of the Zeiss group. And I think I do something pretty interesting there because I've been working on combining different disciplines that in my view belong together under one roof. So I've been working on combining UX, content creation, translation, terminology, and also the data management, the knowledge management aspect, and the tech around it under one roof. And that's what's been keeping me busy for the last few years at Zeiss.
You just described the framework you are working in, and I think that's really where language intelligence fits in. I like your expression. You bring several disciplines under one roof. And this is sometimes, often I would say, this is something that is often missing in some organizations, that people are managing different facets of language in a siloed way, or in a too focused way. And I think, as you explained, when you manage different disciplines or different activities in one consistent way, so that there is a supply chain where you can, for instance, also have some impact on how data is used, then of course it's ideal. So I think many people listening to us or watching us today will be jealous, because your framework is something that many people are still trying to implement, and it's not easy for a number of reasons: cultural, organizational, political sometimes. So if we talk about first transformation. Obviously, everybody knows that right now language management in general is impacted by huge transformation. That transformation started some time ago already. It was amplified by, of course, generative AI, but I would say that is another reason for managing some activities or some disciplines related to language in a more consistent way, in a more effective way. So I would like to start by asking you, what is your view on the impact of automation in general, and of course AI in particular, on multilingual content management or product management? What is really your main challenge with this increased automation?
Yes, I think it's basically a curse and a blessing at the same time. So I'm a very technical person, but I'm also a linguist, and I'm also a person who looks at things from the business side. So the challenge is certainly balancing it all. So I highly appreciate automation whenever it comes with benefits for the human beings. So when you can free humans from tedious manual work, that is something I highly appreciate automation for, and we use it whenever we can. The same goes for when you can improve quality, like also there are manual tasks, for example, that are much more prone to risk if a human does it, rather than when you have a really validated, data-driven process behind it. So there are also risk-related advantages which I see in automation. But at the same time, especially if we talk about AI, I see the biggest challenge in the speed that is expected, and it's also the pressure that in terms of speed that is put on certain departments, also on our department or our disciplines, to implement AI without maybe asking the right questions, without evaluating the risks and taking enough time to evaluating the risks. So there's two aspects. First of all, you need to ask the right questions, and that takes time and capacity. Not everybody is willing to invest. So, it should be there tomorrow. That's the expectation, at least many times. So implement it, and then it's there, and then it's fine. So speeding it up is easy. Slowing it down and asking the right questions in the corporate context of today is a challenge. So you do want to apply it, but you do not want to apply anything to any process. I work in a regulated field, so I work in medtech. I'm responsible, my team and we are responsible for the technical documentation, for the instructions for use, and the user interface content that is on our medical products. So this is highly regulated and highly sensitive content. And applying AI there really needs a thorough risk assessment. And also, I think what we're lacking very often is the in-depth knowledge around what the tools or technology really does and what the impact is in terms of risks to the value chain and also to the outcome. So very often there's the expectation, use AI, and then it'll be fine. But it's then sometimes challenging to explain, well, there are risks to transparency. You cannot maybe guarantee traceability of certain content reuse in our chains. I think that's another aspect that really the in-depth knowledge isn't maybe not even there or not there at the right degree yet. So it takes a lot of time to really evaluate the risks at the right level.
Since you mentioned before that your framework is, what is called content operations, where you bring multiple activities and multiple disciplines in one framework, what sort of recommendation or what sort of experience would you share to tell this is the direction that you should take to also move from translation localization to global content operations and do more than just what you do today?
Yeah, I think it's getting closer to the product is a very important aspect to it. So it's not just one service which can be, or the perception of one service that can be replaced either by external services or by technology in the end. It's really worth taking the time of explaining what data are being improved or being produced, and then which data can improve business impact of the company. I think the data, I always say it's data gold we're producing every day. We do not just produce instructions for use to ship with a product or hopefully good quality user interface and UX content, but also actually we produce high quality product content in over 45 languages, at least in our case, every day. So, every machine and everything we come up with in terms of innovation and digitalization and efficiency is based on good quality data. And I spend a lot of time focusing and outlining the advantages of that. And I can only recommend putting the focus and the spotlight on the data we're producing. So it's not just producing it for the sake of having a product in the end that nobody might be interested in so much, but it's really data gold. And the way we structure it, the way we manage it, to me personally, is going to be one of the differentiators as to how competitive and successful a company is going to be tomorrow. That sounds huge, but I think in the end, that's the overall impact. Data and good quality data in many languages. So there's not just one language we're talking about, many, many languages it's going to have. And you can already see it at the moment. So if you have Gen AI POCs, for example, and some of them use our content, some of them don't. The ones that are good are the ones that use the high quality and obviously then structured content to support their machines and to improve the output of their machines. And maybe there's another important aspect I'd like to highlight is the fact that I think it's super important for leaders, but not only for leaders in localization and translation, to always align their doing and their plans for tomorrow with their company strategy. If you don't have a seat at the table, you will get it like this. And if you already have a seat at the table, you will keep it by always aligning what you do and what your current and tomorrow's impact is going to be with what the company really needs. And that needs also flexibility in times like these. So if you come up with an OKR today, it might not make sense in half a year's time, then you have to adjust it because you have to be as flexible as your C-level has to be. But I think that's one of the keys of staying relevant and creating impact also tomorrow for content teams or for translation teams.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think indeed you have to get closer to what the business needs. And also, as you said, to be really focused on or to lean into business processes related to product management, so that there is no disconnection or there is no distance between translation, localization, and the rest of what the company is doing. I have a sub question for you regarding data, because I'm also a very data-driven person. So out of curiosity, since language data today is more important than ever, of course, to train generative AI, but in general, I would say language data has become, in the past year, has become more important than ever. Have you faced any specific challenge regarding language data, which might be the quantity of data or the quality of data, or sometimes the fact that in some languages you had all the data you needed, but not in all other languages?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the one that comes to mind immediately is the one of aligning metadata structures, knowledge concept structures across a huge enterprise like ours. So it appears to be logical and apparently simple to say, well, let's agree on a very basic concept of data, but that very, very quickly gets, on the one hand, political, but on the other hand, there are real technical constraints that maybe are connected to your production environment at certain sites, to data quality you cannot touch at the moment. So there's many practical aspects also which you cannot challenge easily by just saying, well, we got to come to a conclusion. So that's really taking a lot of effort to align and also to understand the impact of this alignment on everyday, sometimes business critical processes.
As soon as you dive into data, there are quite a number of challenges which are more or less tricky, depending on your industry, depending on what you do with it. And since you mentioned also before that obviously you are in a regulated industry, the pressure, of course, on leaders like you is about speed, it's about volume, but there is one type of pressure that is very specific to regulated industries, which is compliance. So is there anything else that you have on your table, on your plate every day that is driven by compliance and that you need to integrate in your content operations management?
Well, there's something on my plate which is always balancing risk versus the advantages of technology. Mm-hmm. I think I would call that a regulatory or a quality management / regulatory topic, which is something we have to consider every day. So we cannot just use it and then decide whether quality is good enough. There is always a baseline of quality and of regulatory compliance, which we'll have to agree on. So I think technology brings one thing, it brings or it forces you into clarity as to what quality and the baseline is in terms of regulatory demands in your company. So that is something that comes when you look into technology, and you can't hide away from those questions. So you bring your stakeholder to the table and you say, right, what risks are we ready to take? The big ones, then who's going to take it? The very low ones, then we may be slower than competition. So where do you find the right balance while still being compliant in the end when the audit comes, and obviously also wanting to have a very high level of quality for your customer and for your user in the end as well. That is the big challenge, is basically balancing what there is, and then also making sure that, it sounds very simple, that the technology you have is also validated for the processes. That's also a quality management topic, so you have to really validate it. That's again a topic of speed, and also find the right roles for it. That's not a merely regulatory topic, but maybe a general one. That we are now, for example, in the process of redesigning roles and responsibilities, also with our regulatory and labeling department. Because we found that the traditional roles and responsibilities do not really fit what our future partly data-driven processes require. So that's something that is on my plate, and is something that has changed, like the everyday processes, and talking of end-to-end processes, that the players have changed, the responsibilities, and it takes a lot of discussion who owns what within this process, because content operations sounds like, okay, there's an input and an output, but in creating an IFU in a regulated context, you have so many players and so many stakeholders who have to contribute with their specific technical content, and they have to sign it, they have to approve it. And then where is the process responsibility in terms of language operations? Where is the technical responsibility for example, the data integrity? That's maybe another topic that is a regulatory or partly regulatory topic. How do we maintain data integrity? That's something I look into very deeply, because that is, I think, a high-risk topic in our industry. You can, if you have a data-driven process where you want to reduce manual actions into, then you have to make sure that your data you use as a basis of automation is exactly the state you want it to be in, and you have to make sure that there's not going to be a change in this set of data until you reuse it for an automated pre-translation, for example. So that's also touching the topic of regulatory and compliance. And it's tricky, like technically in a large enterprise where there are so many players and people need access to certain data. So yeah, that's interesting. Let me put it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, of course, accountability. And sometimes we got the question, why do you say all the time that you want to keep humans in the center, not just in the loop, but in the center of language management? But one of the reasons for keeping humans in the center of language management is accountability, is also to make sure that humans are not delegating anything and everything to automation. So obviously we just talked about transformation and the challenges and the impact, but of course transformation must have an objective, and the usual goal, the top priority, is value creation. This is something that sounds probably obvious to many people, but since value means different things to different people, of course it has to be defined properly. Because if it's not defined properly, it cannot be measured and it cannot be improved, consistently. So from your perspective, what does value entail when you are leading the operations in your environment?
Yeah, I think value, if you look at it in a very narrow perspective of our doing, is that we actually deliver what is required from us to deliver, in our case, is the product. So we need to make sure that it is there. So the IFU created or translated, or the user interface aligned with all our engineering and UX colleagues is there in time at the right quality. So please define quality. That's another challenge, but at the quality we defined. And in times like these, even more so, that we really leverage whatever we can to make it as cost efficient as possible. And also time to market is getting more and more important in our field. So it is balancing all of these. So to be honest, I'm not a short-sighted KPI person. I think it needs to have the balance of all those things to make sure that we serve the requirements of the market or of our company. So only having the highest quality, but being so slow that nobody is able to buy our products because some people buy other companies' products in the meantime, is not helping. So really the real challenge, that's then not the easy answer you were hoping for, but sometimes you have to differentiate things a little. I think it's finding the right balance, and that might change as well. That's one thing, like in the daily operational field, sometimes we have a priority on speed, sometimes we have a priority on high quality, sometimes we have a complicated market, then we have the priorities on different aspects of the doing. So we manage that pretty flexibly, always quality and obviously making sure that the product is safe is a baseline, that goes for sure. But yeah, if we're a little bit late to the market, but we make sure that we don't have issues in the market, and sometimes that's also an advantage. I think the other thing, talking of value, is really something we have to talk about more, I think, in our industry, is that it's not just what we do today to keep the business running and successful, but it's also how the alignment is and how the vision is for the future. So as a leader in our field, I think you always have to balance what is required now, and are we delivering what we need, but also how can we get better, and how can we serve the organizational needs of tomorrow. And I know that's difficult in everyday chaos, and with there's a lot of pressure and demands on leaders in localization and translation at the moment, but I can only recommend taking the time and investing some hours, minutes, whatever you have to spare per week or months, in really stepping back and thinking, what will my team need, what will the company need from our team, or from what we have or need to develop in terms of expertise, so that we as a team, but mainly the company, will remain competitive also tomorrow. I can only recommend that, because otherwise we will increase in importance, and relevance obviously is gonna be challenged at some point in time. So that's value creation for me as well, and I see that as part of our responsibility, and also as part of my job description, to be honest, to make sure that we'll still be there tomorrow, not for the sake of being here, but for the sake of supporting the company.
Talking about value creation, I heard many times last year, and probably I will hear the same this year. And I'm a big I'm a big fan of this move, which is the move from quality to effectiveness, to define and to deliver value creation. So the difference typically is that historically quality is more focused on output, which is production, volume, etc. And effectiveness is also including experiences. So would you say that for you, that sort of difference is also important between quality, which is output driven, and effectiveness, which is outcome driven?
Yes, very much so, even though I might not differentiate it exactly like this, because I think quality and experience do have something in common, or are correlated at some point as well. But I get your question, and I think yes, and I can support that with an example. When I set up my team, which is a totally new team, so I had the pleasure and the responsibility of setting up this team totally from scratch. And I also had the chance to find out the right position or the right organization within our enterprise to position this team in. And that was not an easy decision, but we ended up, and I'm very happy about this, in the UX team, because I was thinking as where are we closest to the user? And also I think you need to differentiate, at least in our context, between the client or the buyer and the user. So we produce technical medical technology that might be bought by a clinic, but it's in the end used by medical personnel, a doctor, and so on. So the experience of the person that has to use our device every day, with all the friction, all the advantages, or what differentiates our product from another company's product, is basically influencing, at least in my experience and my opinion, the buying decision in the end. So it's not us defining quality, where we have this very baseline of regulatory compliance, of course, so we're not going to go below that. But who defines quality? The user with their buying decision, or the client and the buyer and their user, who obviously tells them this is a good product or this is not a good product to use in everyday use. And so I think it's super important to have the experience in mind. And we can also see that many companies or teams switch their names to global experience, for example, which is in certain industries certainly a good move. It doesn't work for us because experience is too wide a term in our organizational structure, so that wouldn't work for us. But user experience is certainly something we'll have to look into, and that's something we can support also as a team. So we get, for example, the chance to use our user research colleagues and their support in making a content audit, or in using the research phase in the R&D development project to get some input as to how our user interface content-wise is perceived. That is a change, for example, that was not there before. That is something we're introducing, and which is going to have a huge impact in quality as it might be perceived, or the usability of our product. And that's closely related, and basically probably the main driver behind users saying this is a good product or not. So they need to navigate smoothly through the product. So that's what we can do in terms of content, support them, reduce cognitive load, and make it very clear and very easy and smooth to navigate and work with our products. On the other hand, also support research activities by providing insights from our feedback loops, for example. Sometimes when we get feedback, we can also we share them with service colleagues, or with colleagues from the R&D and from the innovation team, so that they basically know, okay, this is how we're really perceived out there. It's not what we think is a nice feature or a nice thing to say, but it's actually causing confusion, or it's really something we need. So experience certainly, or if you call it effectiveness in that context, is something I think we need to move closer to, and also support the trend there.
And with this, we are coming to the end of our conversation today, Carola. So would you have any final words about language intelligence or content operations for the audience watching us today?
So I would like to encourage everyone out there who is facing the challenges in conversations around AI replacing humans or replacing linguists, in really having the courage to step up for what we really do and what the value is we already create, and really look at the data aspect. Please use it whenever you can. I think you're ensuring that we are going to have a good impact, or a positive impact, on what's happening. So let's not allow AI or technology to get into the driver's seat. Please make sure that we keep and get this this level of control and this place at the table. I think it's crucial to really not give in and say, well, nobody listens to us. Please be there. Keep repeating yourself. I have been repeating myself constantly for years. It's part of my job, and I consider it part of my responsibility. It might be tiring at times, but still, I think it's worth doing it. Also, from an ethical perspective, it's really important that we point out that the humans need to evaluate what we need, and need to decide what we need, how we do it, and what the outcome needs to be. So we need to control it, and it takes energy. But I think everyone out there, whether they're in a leader's role or in an operational role, should invest the energy in making our case. And if you're a leader, or at least have a leadership mindset, always keep strategy in mind. Really have a look at what your company's vision is, and then try and align, at least in small activities you're doing, so that you create everyday value that supports your company strategy. I think that's another way of staying relevant and successful in the future.
Awesome, great points, great conclusion. And of course, yes, let's keep humans in the center, humans in control. Thank you so much for your time, Carola. Today, it was great conversation.
Thank you, Bruno. Bye-bye.